I'm Leon Todd for G66. Welcome to another Tuesday Tone Tip. Today we're going to talk about bass tones for guitar players on the FM3 and the Axe-Fx III. If you're like me, you're a guitar player who happens to own a bass guitar, and you probably end up playing bass a lot more than you realize when you're recording at home. I know I am constantly pulling out the bass guitar to lay down scratch bass tracks on demos and recordings that I do, and having a just kind of grab and go preset on my FM3 or my Axe-Fx III is really, really handy. So this is my 89 Japanese jazz bass, totally stock, plugged straight into the FM3. And one great way to get a bass guitar tone is just to record a really clean DI and process it later. And you can do that with the FM3 by just going input block to output block. This is what it sounds like on my jazz. So one thing you notice, aside from my absolutely crummy fingerstyle playing, I'm gonna have to switch over to a pick in a second, is that there's quite a big volume difference between the low string and the A string on this bass guitar. So one way to deal with that is with compression. My favorite compressor in here for bass guitar is the optical compressor. I like to set the light type to EL foil. I've turned the compression down to about 3. This should give me around 9 to 10 dB of gain reduction, and I have compensated by turning the level control up. Let's have a listen to it now with the compressor on. So it's adding some sustain, it's kind of leveling out my lack of dynamics in there, taking out all the inconsistency. And as I play with a pick, I get this. So I quite like that, again, because I'm a lousy bass player. I really need a compressor in the chain to just make everything sound a lot more consistent. We can emulate the sound of plugging into a classic channel strip a couple of different ways. My favorite way is to use a cabinet block in here, but to not use an impulse response at all. So if you go factory 2 and we go to 1024, the last factory cabinet in there, this is a totally flat impulse response. And what we can do is then make use of the preamp emulation in here. I'm going to set the preamp mode to high quality. We've got quite a few selections. We've got transformer-based preamps, tube-based preamps, tape, FET, bipolar preamps in here. It's all really, really good stuff. Maybe let's go for a transformer-based preamp. I'm going to crank up the drive and the saturation right here. We can compensate for the fact that the volume is going to go down by turning the level up. Maybe we'll bring that up by, say, 9 dB. Let's have a listen to it. That's as much slap as I'm going to do there, but you can see that that works quite nicely. We've also got an EQ section in here. You know, if I want a kind of classic scooped out bass guitar tone, I can crank the bass and the treble and bring the mids down. And that's a really lovely, clean bass guitar tone. I'm going to show you another preset now. This is actually the preset that Ryan from my band Ragdoll uses live. I've converted it from the Axe-Fx III over to the FM3 for this case, but this is more of your kind of aggressive, in-your-face, distorted rock bass guitar tone. Okay, in this case, the main elements of the sound are the SV Bass 2 amp model. You can see where it's dialed in right there. combined with this factory impulse of a 4x10 bass guitar cabinet. And there is also the option of having the black glass 7K drive pedal on there. Let's hear this without the drive pedal. So it's kind of got that SVT grind going on. It isn't super bright sounding, so what the drive pedal here is going to do is, in addition to adding distortion, it's going to add a whole bunch of treble and bass in there. We get this. Very nice stuff indeed. You notice that kind of pick noise though when I'm playing? One way we can squash that is with a multi-band compressor. So let's dial up a multi-band compressor. And this is kind of the bass guitar with a pick analog of using the multi-band as a dynamic EQ when we're trying to kind of squash down excess low-end chugs on guitar. So in my blocks library, I have my guitar-based multi-band compressor dynamic EQ thing. What I'm going to do is totally change the crossover frequencies. So we'll set the high crossover to around 5K or something like that, maybe 4.5. And I'll bring the low one up so that it is maybe not 5K, but say somewhere around 3.5K. So we're really going for that kind of pick noise frequency in there. I'll just adjust these. There we go. All right, something like that. What have we got? About 3 to 6K in there. Let's have a listen. We're just kind of squashing some of that annoying scratchy pick noise that if you're someone like me who plays guitar with a pick most of the time, you're not going to notice. You could hear when I was playing with my fingers, that frequency is just not in there at all. I'm not striking the string with a piece of hardened plastic. So you probably don't have to worry about that. But the SV bass together with this factory bass IR, a little bit of low cut and high cut, and then the black glass to add some real aggression in there. It's a great way to get a rock bass guitar tone. The other thing you can do here is set the mix to values other than 100% if you want more of your kind of low end preserve. So let's go say 50% on the mix here. We have a listen to this. Again, you can totally dial this in to taste, but that kind of bass-specific drive pedal with the mix control on your drive so you can preserve some low end together with the SVT. It's just my favorite rock bass guitar amp of all time. And a little bit of that multi-band if you're playing along with a pick there. So that would be our kind of traditional amp style sound. Of course, what we could do is blend these two approaches into a multi-band bass guitar sound, kind of a modern take on all of this using, I like to use filter blocks in case of a crossover. In this case, I'll show you what I'm talking about. So this is a simplified version of a kind of modern multi-band bass setup. I'm using 2 bands here. You'll often see this done with 3 bands. I have a tutorial over on my YouTube channel all about this approach. But at the moment, what I've got are 2 filter blocks. The top one is set as a low pass filter. So this is going to be for the low end. I want my clean low end intact. And I set the frequency at 800 Hertz. Then we're running into the good old optical compressor from the first part of the video. Down here, I've got a high pass filter at 800 Hertz, and I'm running this into the same bass chain for the kind of rock bass section, but I've just cranked up the drive. So this is going to be really dirty, and what we want to do is use this to add some crust on top of our lovely clean low end right there. So let's have a listen to just the low end here. I've got this whole section of the chain bypass because my filter block is set to mute. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kick it in, and then I'm going to bring up the amp level to mix in as much distortion as I need. So far clean. And let's kick this filter block in and bring the amp level up. I kind of like it about there. If we take out this clean low end, we just have this kind of really ratty high end sound. So that's a much more modern approach to this kind of bass guitar idea. Another thing you can do is just totally get rid of this drive block and use a really distorted guitar amp for your high end. So I really like the Atomica High on bass. And again, we'll just kind of blend it in, but we've cranked the input drive. I want this to sound really nasty and gnarly on top of my clean DI. So that's kind of got the King's X thing going on there. I'm basically splitting everything out using a really clean DI blended with a super distorted, crusty sounding top end. Like I said, you can expand on this with 3 or more bands depending on the sound that you're chasing. But these are really, again, intended as bass tricks for guitar players, which is me. So thank you so much for putting up with my terrible bass playing today. If you're someone who's using the FM3 or the Axe-Fx III specifically for bass, feel free to chime in the comments and let us know some of your favorite tips, tricks, and effects and amp models for use on bass guitar. Again, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you all next time.